All right, welcome everyone. It's just a couple minutes after 3 here in my time. I'm in San Francisco. This is the unceded territory of the Ohlone people, and I go by the pronouns he, him. And I want to welcome all of you into this Q&A, which will be part, presentation. I'll share a little bit about this as it is referencing a 3-part workshop that I held over the month of August, titled Seeing Challenges as Guideposts Towards Peace. I'll give a bit of background on that, and after that, then I'll open it up for questions. So if you do think of things during the presentation part, please jot down little notes, or you can even put them into the chat. And sometimes that just helps remind you of your questions or your thoughts. And then I hope we have a nice lively discussion and question answer period afterwards that'll largely be guided by you all, that once again can be through the chat, or you can unmute yourself when we get to that point and be able to talk. So let's take another moment. Make sure you're comfortable. You got maybe your water or a beverage next to you. You've got the cushions you want to feel comfortable. Adjust here and there so you feel that you can settle, and let's settle together. Either close your eyes or maybe look low. In your mind's eye, notice the space you're in. Remind yourself of where you are, where you're located. I'd like to do an intro in a moment, but for the moment, let's do this silently, welcoming each other. And then if it feels available to you, tune into your breath. Notice the inhale and the exhale. And you're welcome to join as I chant Om 3 times. Feel this as a sound vibration that has a calming effect, and also an ability to connect us in the space, even here in the Zoom world. Let's inhale. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. What I'd like to do just to start right off is to ask you all basically how you're doing using a scale from 1 to 10. And then in the chat, I'd like you to put in 10 being a lot of stuff going on, a lot of thoughts, feelings. Day is busy, busy, busy. 1 is feeling settled, centered, and present. So just in the chat, let me know where you are right now. 10 being lots of stuff in the mind, lots of activity around the body-mind area, and 1 being more settled, spacious. Okay, woo, I see a 9. Okay, you're in the right place. 7. 5, right in the middle. Okay, good. And if it's not possible to chat, you're welcome to say it out loud. If some of you want to just unmute and say your number out loud. I see another 5. Okay. And maybe just think to yourself, where are you? You know, what number would you consider? 10 being, that heightened energy, maybe some anxiety and things like that, 1 being that calm, centered place. And then I'd like you all to acknowledge for yourself, can you imagine that number changing? Has there been a time in your life or a period of time where you've imagined that number can change? That it has been a 10, 8, 9, or 10, and at another time it has been 3, 4, 5, something like that. So just with a yes or no, let me know, have you noticed or have you experienced a time when you've been able to go from these heightened numbers to maybe some of those lower 2, 3, 4 numbers? Okay, I get an absolutely. Definitely. Yes. All right. And once again, whenever we do these, you're also, for those that aren't able to chat, you're absolutely welcome to unmute or give a thumbs up. Some of you know the emojis, we can do those. Yes, by the grace. Agreed. Yeah, so it's just helpful. I just like to start off right away with that, this concept of absolutely, we go through many times in our life where there will be challenging moments, things that have risen our emotions to an almost unmanageable level or even unmanageable level in that 9-10 range, and that in some ways there has been the ability to shift them, and that tends to be the case. There's this fluctuation, this rising and falling. My experience has been that alone helps me in some of these moments when I maybe don't feel like I have the tools or the ability to make a real dramatic shift, to at least know that that is possible. I have done that somewhere else along the way. What I'd like to do now, since we have a nice group here, is just, if you are able to, in the space that you're in, to say hello, say your name. If it's something that you practice, you can say your pronouns. Don't feel you have to do that. If you'd like to say where you are in the country or maybe the world, I always love hearing that. So whoever would like to start, we'll just kind of go around one at a time, and let me know where you are. And if you have the chance to say your number that you're feeling right now, if that might have changed at all, let me know.
Hi, my name is Miriam, and I'm in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And I put a 7, probably between a 6 and a 7. I'm just, my body is tired more than anything right now.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Glad you're here.
Hi, I can go. My name is Christina, and I was in Delaware about 5 days ago and just moved to Maine, and I started a new job this past Thursday, so that's why I'm a 9. There's a lot going on, but happy to be here.
Yay, thanks, Christina. Well, congratulations for one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, glad you knew to take care of yourself and be here. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Oh, hi, I'm Divya, and I'm in Woodstock, New York. And it's kind of a mellow day, so keeping up with the meditation and the practice, and about a 5. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's Vivia?
Divya.
Oh, Divya. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And if you were just coming in, I was saying, giving a number between 1 and 10 of how you're feeling in the moment. 10 being a lot going on, intensity, fullness. 1 being the calm, feeling peaceful and centered. So we'll continue with intros.
Dorothy to go next. If so, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Dorothy.
Hi. Talking to you from the great state of Ohio.
That's where I'm from.
You're from Ohio?
I am, Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Okay. Springfield.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So my number is 5, and I really try to
that's one of the reasons, one of the reasons that I migrated to yoga is, with the meditation and all of the other elements that come with it, but it just to help to calm, using those strategies and principles and sacred teachings to just kind of learn to let it go, so that's why I kind of mentioned that the lower numbers, especially, I fluctuate, but I try not to get to the higher numbers if I can help it. If I can help it.
Right.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Dorothy.
Hi, I'm Steve from San Francisco, and I think right now I'm like a 5, but I think once I get off of this session, it'll probably go up.
Go up.
So I'm good when I'm practicing, actually practicing yoga, but when I'm not, I get more stressed.
I see what you mean. I thought you meant as a result of this workshop, it was going to go up when we were done, but you just mean once you get back into your flow of life.
Yeah, just the way I do my rest of my life, I tend to stress a lot. So yoga's a nice break. Always a nice break.
Yep. Oh, this is my brother, everyone. Glad you're here. That's why we call him the Steve Bros. All right. Let's keep going. Anyone else wanted to say hello? I see a couple more that are here. No pressure. If you don't want to, no, you don't have to. And I'll keep an eye on the chat as we go. That's also a perfect place to enter hellos or anything. All right, well, thank you. Nice to have people from different areas. I also have Thibaut, who's actually next to me, but we're on 2 different laptops, right? So do you want to say hi, Thibaut?
Yeah, I can.
You can just say.
I can just speak.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Hi, my name is Thibaut. I live in San Francisco. I'm from France, and my number today, maybe it's 3 or 4, so I'm quite well. Yeah, I did a yoga session this morning, so it helps.
Very good. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Much of my background, for those of you that I'm just meeting today, is through, of course, Integral Yoga. I did my training in 2009 with Swami Satchidananda, and as well as a number of the other Swamis from Integral Yoga in Yogaville at the time. And I've been teaching in the San Francisco Integral Yoga since 2009. And I have in 2020, right at literally the start of the pandemic, I opened up Mukunda Studio, which is where I am now. Very much share the teachings of Integral Yoga and my experience and journey within that, as well as other practices and lessons of life that I've learned. I certainly am just one voice that's sharing my lens, and there are, I think all of us have a lot of wisdom and authority in our own ways, but I'm sharing simply what feel I've been blessed with from some of these teachings. So I'll start to share some slides, and then after a bit of time of that presentation, we'll come back together. So let me know if you all are able to see this screen. Is it coming through? Okay. All right, so again, this was from a 3-part series called Seeing Challenges as Guideposts Towards Peace, and we're having our Sunday Q&A. The way that I like to look at all of these types of offerings is that it's practical yoga in action. So not that we're learning these esoteric things or only learning things about the body on our yoga mat, but that it's practices that we bring out into the world and that we learn by actually practicing these in the world, not by isolating off into these cozy little circles like we're in. These become our sort of our resource space to then learn how to move out into the world. So I always like to remind ourselves that this is meant to bring us out into the world. I'll go through what we went through, and this will be, again, fairly brief, but this may be some things you might have questions on that might come back. So in the first week, I considered this our week on awareness. I talked about it as oneness of the coin with two sides, and then its more yogic definition was conscious awareness and duality. I broke this down as this whole section was to look at the nature of the mind. The first one is the definition of our second Yoga Sutra in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff. It's the restraining of all of the fluctuations and being able to let the mind come to that calm space. We spoke about that. We talked about the habit self and the sense perceptions. So a lot of the ways that we operate through the world are based on more of a habit, almost knee-jerk way of seeing life. Oh, we see this thing, it reminds me of this thing, I immediately respond to it based on that memory. Or, other kinds of knee-jerk ways, or simply our senses, our survival self that sees something that we recognize as a threat, and then we instantly find a response, whether it's a real situation or imagined. We talked about what the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali differentiate between thoughts being either painful or painless. The reason we don't see the word pleasurable, like where's the pleasure? It's because the pleasurable thoughts often lead to painful thoughts. Painful and pleasure are seen as really two sides of one coin. The painless state is that equanimous state where we are no longer judging, criticizing, and thinking life should be this way or why didn't it go that way? It's a more of an accepting space. Swami Satchidananda refers to this that we make choices that are selfish or selfless. So another way to look at the painful or the painless was the selfish or the selfless. So we can quickly analyze our actions in the world and the way that we make choices. Did we just do something that was for the benefit of others or even to the benefit of ourselves, causing no harm, the perfect act? Or was it something that was only to bring benefit to us, that was possibly at odds with someone else and maybe causing harm? We talked about duality and the mental construct of separateness. We often recognize I'm over here, you're over there. That line can get really divided to the point that we're at war. But we see that there is something that we differentiate and we have to try to protect, versus seeing that we're all connected. We all are here to try and understand the commonality. We talked about developing faith in something greater than the self, and that is the beginning of letting the mind understand it's more than this limited self, that it can actually imagine that it has a broader context, that there is something that we could turn to. As Dorothy wrote, by the grace of God, there's something that we can maybe recognize is a higher resource or a higher power that may know more than we can possibly know, beyond our own mind. And then briefly, we talked about a tool of japa mantra repetition of Om. Om, Om. That when we get into that frequency, it's like we're dialing our station to that calming, centering vibration. Versus when we're feeding our mind with all this stuff within our material world that's going to make the mind go zhuzh, 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 zhuzh. So if we can spend some time practicing something like a japa mantra repetition, then that can create some calming effect. So what I'd like to do is just stop share for a moment before I go on and talk about week 2 and 3. Did anybody have any questions or thoughts from that really brief run through? And I know some of you, I understand, do practice. Some of you probably have been through some other workshops or trainings. So anything there that jogged your thought space? And if not, I'll keep going. Miriam.
This this notion of painful and pleasure versus and then painless. I still struggle with that because to me, painless feels like pleasure gives you your energy, or for me, and so you said it's kind of more like painful and pleasure versus painless, which almost feels like not like just blah. So I'd like to talk more about that for me to help me.
Yes.
Probably that's what I need, because I do enjoy the pleasure, the happiness, feelings versus, the peaceful, calm is a nice place to be, of course. But so anyway, I'm rambling, so I'll stop.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, and I think this is often a big topic in this part of the sutras, because wouldn't it seem like we would all just want to always be in the life of pleasure and always the life of avoiding pain so that we can just feel good all the time. Some of the examples that are given are simply to understand something like this. If we think something on the outside is going to make us happy, like, oh, if I just can finish this report that I'm working on, then I'll get to have a cookie at the end, and then I'm going to feel so good and rewarded, and that'll make me happy. Okay, so if the cookie is the thing that's going to make me happy, then what if I ate 1,000 cookies? Is that gonna make me like 1,000 times happier? No, it's going to end up making me feel really sick. So it's just understanding that, yes, maybe the one cookie that'll trigger something in me to have a good feeling, and that is helpful. We're human, we have needs, and we're sensitive. But if we begin to rely on that as a resource that's going to cover us through every situation, at some point it likely is going to let us down. At some point it's either not going to be there anymore, and that thing we were relying on, the cookie jar may be empty, and then you're like, we lose everything because we were relying on that. When we find the painless state, it's not that it's blah, and this is often people think of this way, and I did as well, that if we're having a spiritual practice, it just sounds like we just no longer are like enjoying life, or it sounds bland and blah. My sense and my experience has been that some other part of us wakes up when we stop dulling it with the things that cause fluctuation, and we start to find some of the steadiness of things. You almost dive deeper into the ocean of your human experience, and there becomes more of a resilient sensitivity to things versus this bouncing emotional state. For some of us, that bouncing emotional state feels like life. And this is what I've experienced myself too. I liked the erratic roller coaster. I'm somebody who has addiction as part of my background and recovery. And I enjoyed the life that it kind of created, even as insane as it was at times. But it wasn't until I was able to move away from that addictive cycle that I realized, wow, there's something much more beautiful and fun and enjoyable about life versus relying on that roller coaster of highs and lows. Does that help?
Yes, and I think it's been the times where I've meditated or yoga, you touch that, where you're diving a little deeper, and it is absolutely beautiful, but it takes practice to stay there. So thank you for reminding me, because that is where it is, the sense of calmness that is beautiful. And I think I've gotten caught up in the life, and I needed to be reminded about where that is. And so even in my meditations, my mind has not been there so thank you for that reminder, because it is a beautiful place to be. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for being brave and speaking up. I'm sure you're not the only one that has that same experience and question. And that's what I think we need, is constant reminders, because we will forget. It seems to be part of our, default way as a human, is that we quickly forget some of these things about our life because of that habit mind. We were so built, especially as, we grew up, to be rewarded. Oh, something painful happens. Oh, here's some candy, feel better. Here's all these external things to feel better, and not to learn tools to self-regulate on our own. Some of us did learn some of that, but by and large, my understanding is we rely on the external from such an early age. And in many ways we need to, right? This is part of our human development. And I'll bring this up now too. This reminds me that I often remind myself to remember that not to ever feel bad about having forgotten, or to ever think, oh, I should have remembered this or this, to appreciate that, oh yeah, that's just what's going to happen. And that kind of compassion for the self, I think, goes far, goes a long distance, rather than that other part that's so stuck in that realm of, oh, I'm not good enough. I should have meditated longer. Instead, we just, I can do that right now. In fact, let's all do that right now. Take a deep inhale through the nose and a slow exhale. And if you can, do that again. See if you're able to breathe in, expand, and breathe out. Feel the letting go happen of the breath. And then let yourself come back to regular breathing. Good, and gently open the eyes. So that's just like a 2-breath meditation, I've heard that called, or even a 1-breath meditation you can do. And how amazing, like I talked about in the beginning, there can be that pretty quick shift. Imagine you're having an argument with your partner. You're going at it, and then you go, you know what? I'm going to take a deep breath. Chances are you might re-engage a little differently, depending on how well that breath happened. But I'm really fascinated by that. I think a lot can happen in a breath or two. Anybody have any other comments or questions, or anything also to offer what I shared from Miriam, or her thoughts? The Steve Bros, go ahead.
So, is the painful useful at all?
Absolutely.
Or is it something we should try to totally avoid?
No. The painful, I think it's almost unavoidable that we will have painful experiences. To think that we're trying to lean only to pleasurable experiences until we get to the painless is going to create quite a bit of pain, actually. So one way or another, it's going to create pain. And it's even saying in the sutras, the pleasurable ones are going to likely also at some point lead to a sort of pain. So it's learning how to work with the painful experiences, and sort of on theme with my discussion, the painful or even the challenging situations, I see them as guideposts, that they're actually a positive thing that's registering for us that says, hey, you're learning something valuable here. Utilize this as a marker for the mind becoming more aware of sensitivity. If this didn't challenge us, or this didn't create pain, we would just keep floating along and not really notice a bunch of things. But the moment something happens that it creates pain, it forces us to have to reevaluate and maybe even research our next step. I'll talk about this in the next section, and maybe I should go ahead and move into that. That part of the process is to work with pain, and it's actually the start of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that speaks about tapasya, which is the practice of austerities and pain for purification. So maybe I'll do that. Let me go ahead and move right into the next series of slides here. And then, Steve, if you want to ask more after this, I'll invite you to do that. But let me go in because I think it'll touch on some of this. The second week that I offered was a week on acceptance. So we went from awareness, sort of the light coming on, recognizing the way the mind works, the nature of the mind, to now cultivating a bit of acceptance to understand, okay, this is what happens. I do need other resources. I am limited in the way that I'm operating because I'm on a default of habit. And so some of the things that we talked about as the theme, I called it pressing pause, then play. And the more yogic practice would be non-attachment, practice, and purpose, which is on par with where Miriam was talking about. We've got to remember to practice. So what I spoke about, this was the nature of our growth, that we tend to have all these experiences where we fall down and get up. There tends to be moments where we do get challenged, have painful moments, and we can probably look at where have we actually gotten up when all of those have happened. And I find that that is helpful as almost like a therapeutic and gymnastic exercise for the mind and heart, to be like, oh yeah, that has happened, and I've gotten from A to B. I've fallen down, I've gotten up. Through practice and non-attachment, I talked about this as two wings of a bird, that we need both to help to create that pathway to be able to fly through life. If we practice and we're anxious for the rewards of what we're going to get from it, that means then we're attached to it, and that's fueling our practice. At some point, that's going to limit the way that we understand our ability to thrive in life. Through non-attachment, we recognize, what do we really and truly need in this life? And that takes practice to be able to figure that out. We don't want to, in many ways, Integral Yoga speaks about that we learn by living in life, not by hiding out and avoiding life. So we learn to integrate and do it in a healthy way, that we learn to let go. I spoke about the three gunas. These are the three different constituents of our nature. Sattva being the more equanimous state, Rajas, the active, energizing, fiery state, and the tamas being dull, inert, lethargic. And it's not, once again, I want to get into this, that it's not the good or bad, but we're recognizing that there is just these different movements that we all move through. I spoke about the Purusha, pure consciousness, and Prakriti, the ever-changing nature. We contain both of these, and I think this can be helpful. These are in all of us. We have the Purusha, we have the Prakriti. Prakriti bring the part of us that constantly changes our place in life, the way we see the world. All that's going to constantly fluctuate, but there's a part of us that never changes, that's been with us since we were born and will continue on even after we drop the body. And when we can learn and fully understand that that is within us, that's often said when we have an awakening. I talked about the 4 locks and 4 keys, and this is, once again, inside the Yoga Sutras that Swami Satchidananda talks about the ways that we can keep our peace. Some of you may know this. I'll quickly go through them, and we might come back to these because I love talking about these. The 4 locks would be the happy person, unhappy person, the virtuous person, and the contrary or wicked person. And here are the keys. The happy person, we meet them with friendliness. The unhappy person, we meet with compassion. The virtuous person, we meet with delight. And the contrary or wicked person, we actually disregard, or we meet with dispassion. And I'll just quickly give an example. Maybe that sounds obvious. Well, of course you'd have compassion for the unhappy person. But think about the times when you've been happy for for the unhappy person. Well, they deserve that. They kept doing that over and over. I knew this would happen to them. They deserve to feel bad. How often has that kind of a feeling come up? And so what's suggested here is that actually isn't going to help us keep our peace. It actually continues to energize more of the negativity. Kriya Yoga, so this is what I wanted to get to with Steve. This is a pathway that's spoken about in the second, I think it's a number of the next sutras in the second chapter, Tapasya, Svadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. Tapasya is the austerities, pain for purification. So it's learning to accept pain, but not causing pain to others. So if somebody cuts you off when they're driving, a knee-jerk reaction might be, I'm going to go chase them and I'm going to cut them off. I want them to see how I felt. Instead, somebody veers in front of you and you try to have a practice of whatever you can do to keep your calm. Deep breath. Sometimes what I do is I say, for all I know, they're on their way because there's somebody about to give birth and they're just racing to get to the hospital. I better move out of their way. Svadhyaya is study of scriptures. So being able to use some resource, sort of that idea of the japa mantra where you're tuning your station by filling the mind with things that you trust, resources that you can read and trust. Ishvara Pranidhana is absorption with the divine, with the higher power, Mother Nature, something that you feel you can develop a bond with that feels greater than the limited mind self. The 5 kleshas, I'm going to show a slide of this also later. This is key, I think, in a lot of our practices. And we spent some time on talking about what they are. These are the obstacles to keeping our peace as well. They all start with ignorance. The ignorance that is talked about in the sutras is that we are forgetting that we are all connected, that we are more in line with the Purusha, the pure consciousness, rather than being defined by the Prakriti, the ever-changing self. When we are in that state of ignorance, it lends itself to let the ego evolve. The ego differentiates, the ego is saying, here's mine, that's yours, which leads then to having attachments and aversions. I have to get that to be happy. If I can just make this happen, everything will ease out for me. If I can just get this job, then I'm going to be fine and I will never have to worry. Aversion is, well, I don't want to be like that person. As long as I don't ever have to be like them, I know that I'm going to be just fine. Or, I can't believe they're doing that. That doesn't make any sense. They shouldn't do that. So those are continually going to cause our mind to wrestle. Once again, not to stop these. I think these will probably always be the way our mind works, but to recognize this pathway, we can go, oh, okay, I see why I'm feeling unsettled right now. I got attached to this situation needing to go my way. I needed my friend to call me and tell me that she was sorry, or else I was never going to forgive her. And now I'm angry and we lost our friendship. So we look at, is that really, or am I forgetting we already are one? Let me come back to that feeling. Clinging to life, fear of death. Once we are so wound up with our ego, the attachments, aversions, it's hard to feel ourselves being able to fully make peace with letting go of this body and thinking we are only the body. But the practice of yoga leads us to recognize we are more than the body, we are more than our thoughts. This is a lot of information, I realize, but this I'm just sort of helping you see. And if you're interested, this does go into detail in the full workshop that I gave. So if it comes again, this is an idea of what this is. Ashtanga Yoga is essentially another word for the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali's philosophy. Now, this is way too big for me to go into, but just to say that there are the 8 limbs, which one of them includes asana, postures. Some of us think that's all that yoga is getting on a mat, making our body flexible, and then turning into a pretzel. That is not the practice. That might be part of the practice that prepares us, but ultimately all of these prepare us towards meditation. we learn to create alignment in body, mind, and even spirit towards that thing that helps to create calm and clarity. And that leads to discriminative discernment. It's like becomes very clear how to make choices. We no longer look like, for myself, I am vegan. I have a plant-based diet. And when I see certain foods, I tell my friends this, I no longer see that as food. When I see a certain type of food, I'm like, to me, that's not food. I'll tell them what it is if they really want to hear it. But it's actually not something that I think is for human consumption. And that to me is just that's where my path has led me, to discern something that it breaks my heart, to be honest, when I really think about the animal industry and animal farming. And my hope is that one day that will become also it'll be as obvious to us as, binding feet was at some point, like that was a normal habit. Or slavery, that we'll recognize at some point that's definitely was a bad thing that happened, but it's still happening in discrete ways, and some of them aren't so discrete. So we learn to see things as they are, and then we can make different choices. Okay, check-in time. Again, I know that was a lot. If you need to see the slide for any of your questions, otherwise, any feeling you're having, anything that's coming up that maybe feels helpful to bring words to. Can anybody relate to the kleshas, the obstacles? Oh, I see the Steve Rose. Go ahead. You have an interesting graphic that when you raise your hand, I don't see it unless you move to the side. I like it, but there we go. Then it's, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, peace. I'll go, go ahead.
Dorothy.
Dorothy, I once went to a yoga retreat many years ago up near Woodstock, and the Swami was saying that the kleshas are like, we're getting up through this hole in the ground. There's a hole in the earth, and we're going up, but the kleshas are pulling us down.
Wow.
So we're trying to ascend, and so we have to keep going.
That's a good one. My goodness. Yeah, they can feel like the heaviest backpack in the world, especially if we don't think we have a choice. And that's what I think I appreciate about this philosophy, is that it helps us see, oh, this is normal for my mind to go to these places, and I can recognize them for what they are and be less tangled up by them. Right. Oh, I can let one part of that backpack go, right? So that's cool. I'm gonna meditate on that one. I actually like the whole thought of that. Beautiful. Thank you, Divya. The Steve Bros. And Jivapriya said, love that.
Kind of, to me, what's that?
Oh, I just wanted to acknowledge Jivapriya said, love that as well with what Divya shared. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was very good. Thanks, Divya. I don't know why it's coming to me, but it seems like a lot of what's being talked about is kind of like cleansing the perception. Kind of like, okay, what is the human perception? And then cleansing it, and then being able to kind of monitor. So that's kind of what's coming to me. Like, it's like before the yoga practices, maybe, and other practices like Buddhism, maybe my discernment wasn't so good. And so I couldn't learn from the pain. But it's okay, once I get these tools to make the proper discernment, then I can use pain as a teacher instead of like being scared of it all the time.
That's amazing. I'm glad this was recorded so you can maybe catch yourself saying that again, because that was, I think, a very clear, distinct perception of what this is exactly. And that's what I see as this theme of seeing challenges as guideposts to peace. Challenges are not guideposts to somewhere else to feel like we're doomed forever. I think it's to actually clear a way to recognize we've been convinced that all these other things were who we are, but we start to learn how to move those off to the side. So well said. I love it. All right, because I see the time here, wow, I'm going to go ahead and move to what was the third week of the slides, and the third week was moving into action. So if we remember, first week was awareness, second week was acceptance. So really deepening into this, oh wow, that makes sense why this happens. I understand more. Now we think about how we can take some action on our journey. And I called it Help is on the Way and Within. And the yogic sort of version of that is peace as stillness and movement. And I sectioned this as the nature of peace. Our true nature is peace. That's a big slogan of many spiritual teachings and Swami Satchidananda. I talked about the difference of spiritual bypass or spiritual work. Sometimes we think if we can just avoid all the things, no, you're bothering me. I need to be more in a calm space. Sometimes by pushing away from so many things, we think that we're doing the work, but it's actually sometimes by confronting ourselves with those experiences that it actually is opening us up to understand what it is. So recognizing that tendency to avoid versus to dive in. And sometimes we do need to have boundaries where we're like the lock and key of the contrary or wicked person. We don't always have to dive in. In fact, sometimes if we do, it might be detrimental. So understanding our boundaries with that too. Practices that help us discover the root cause. So it talks about in the Yoga Sutras that really only through some kind of reflective practice are we going to get to the root. Otherwise, we keep trying to chop off all the leaves and branches of whatever it is, and it's going to keep growing back. But to some of these things that we can actually get to, and what I've learned also, what I really enjoy and appreciate about this yogic journey, is that we find that root in the right time when we need to. To never be afraid that it's going to just like come out of nowhere, like jump out of the closet and be like, hello, I'm the root you're trying to dig up, and scare you. It's going to slowly, you're going to find that's where you need to get to with a regular practice. I talked about the light of wisdom and the light of purification, just sort of this practice that continues to help us recognize and discern. And it's through this that it cleanses us rather than burns us. I talked about cravings that lead us to awaken or fall asleep. Sometimes it's actually that longing for something that once we recognize what we're really truly longing for, it becomes more of a pure longing. I looked at that in my addictive cycle, that I had a craving, and what I realized I truly was craving was a connection with higher power. I was craving to understand my true self, but I was actually drowning in the addiction, which actually, again, like I said, felt like life, but truly I was falling asleep. And so the nature of addiction and challenge to overcome. Building divine connection and our community. And it truly is recognizing, we don't do this alone. It requires some kind of Sangha community, connection with the higher power, versus willing ourselves to just find peace. I'm going to do whatever I can to be peaceful. Like that's probably going to, an aggressive way to peace, like fight for peace. I always think that's so interesting when I hear that. But I do understand it because we do have to put forth effort. Peace as stillness and movement. It's not that peace should be, once again, that we're just in this, nothing bothers me because I'm holding my breath. It's, I can walk through the world, accept that all these things happen, things can come at me and move off me, and then I don't let it bother me. And this is all one day at a time. This is not something where we're going to figure something out today and boom, I go from a 10 to a 1 every day. This is going to be probably accepting. Those fluctuations are exactly natural. If we weren't in a human body still, we wouldn't probably be dealing with the things that we're dealing with. But for some reason, we are in this human form, and it means we're going to have things to come to understand. I have this slide, just I like this. It's not really a yes or no, an either or. It's not extremism, but it's finding a way to be in that space of the unknown and the mystery, to differentiate between things that feel like facts and things that actually feel like are leading us the wrong path. So I like to always sort of leave that room in our head that we're not getting into this narrow way of like, it has to be this way or else, because I think that that can cause its own stress and challenge. And this was sort of my slide on the spiritual bypass, like hiding in the plants, trying to act like nobody can see you, or putting your head in the hole, or acting happy all the time as if that's the way to be. Trying to defend all the time. You know, there's all these ways that we have learned to function, and just to sort of notice when they happen, not to be hard on ourselves. I showed this slide in the last talk also, to look at the way that we work with practice and non-attachment, and that this picture of the person creating the ceramic, working with clay, if anybody's ever thrown on a wheel, you have to be non-attached to that. But you also, by practicing, you develop the ability to create something symmetrical. At first, it turns into blobs. Like you try to work on it, it's like blah, blah, blah. And it's your one little move of the thumb, and it turns into a blob. So learning to discipline the mind, to be with it, to be steady, this helps us create these, something that would be more useful, a container that'll hold something. I like the pieces of a puzzle, like we're just constantly putting this puzzle together, and then utilizing resources like in my mention of svadhyaya, study of scriptures, and a tree growing from that. So here's my slide, and then we'll do some discussion back on all those other topics. Is I just feel like this is kind of our journey of life. It's like we have all this stuff around us that we identify as real. We think this is life. And in many ways it is, because we are in a body, we are experiencing things, but at the center of this, that red dot, the bindu, is like, that's the source, that's the place of peace. All these other things are leading us towards finding that center. Okay, moment to pause and reflect. Maybe let's take another deep breath together. Feel whatever part of your body is connecting to the ground or your chair, your seat. Feel like you can sink just a little bit more into that. And on the inhale, feel that bright energy that lengthens the torso. It lifts the top of the head to the sky without causing the body to become stiff. Relax the face muscles, and maybe try bringing a gentle smile to the face. See what that does. It can be very small, almost unnoticeable, just to you. And relax the face. And gently begin to open the eyes. Any thoughts or questions? Amy emphasized peace as stillness and movement, one day at a time. Yes. That's actually going to be the topic of a satsang that I'll offer through the San Francisco Integral Yoga at the end of September. It's exactly that theme, peace as stillness and movement. I'll finish the slides. There's just a couple left. Oh, I just sort of wanted to show this about the kleshas. It's sort of another, my English sort of side of the conversation. So ignorance is seeing the non-self as the self. So we have our higher self, we have our habitual self, and we tend to think all we are is the habitual self. The ego, which is truly, we sometimes think that we know everything. We are the end of the sentence, that there's actually something greater. There is the Purusha. We think with attachments we'll forever be happy. We think with aversions we'll be pain-free. But that leads to clinging to bodily life and having fear of death. And that just basically comes from our instinct. It's built into the cells of our body to cling. It's all the way down to the cellular level that we don't want to die. And just sort of getting to this, truth is one, paths are many, which is of course the key slogan of integral yoga and many spiritual teachings. So we tend to think, oh, I have to do the, figure out how to do this, and only by going through this way or through that way. But I think even the challenges are part of our path. I don't think, honestly, if we were to try to create a life that was free of all those, I've heard there's some conversations about this, that it would actually be pretty boring. And we'd eventually get so bored, we'd want something to happen. If everything was always going perfect, we'd almost throw something in there to be like, what happens if I do that? Now, we don't think that in this moment. And I know, I think about my childhood and my journey. I would never want to have another parent go through what I asked my parents to go through. But it is what it is. And I am who I am, because of that. And I've learned to find that place of acceptance. And maybe from it, try to be of service in the world, and think about what did I learn from all of that. So I'm not just repeating through my habit nature to cause harm, but to be like, oh, wow, that was painful. That caused hurt. I don't want to do that to someone else. How can I do this differently? I'm going to have to look inside a little bit. Well, somehow we made it to our hour-long time together, and so I don't want to keep you, but I've really enjoyed getting to engage with you, and I feel like I need another hour with you to really explore some of these topics. But I'll go ahead and say thank you to those of you that need to go, and if anybody wants to stay on for a few more minutes, or you have any questions, I would love to support you. Oh, good. Thank you, Amy. And thanks for the chat about that. I'm glad you were here. Anybody have any last thoughts or anything you want to ask before we say goodbye today? Dorothy Gordon.
I saw you had a slide on the writing.
Oh, yeah.
That would be noteworthy, I guess, to do some of that.
Yes, I agree. So usually what I do is I let it also be part of our work together. That was done in the third session, so that we can have a container for it. But I think it's, yes, always helpful to have this handy. In what area of life are you experiencing challenges? And I just came up with these categories. There's more. And every now and again, when we can pinpoint where we are, which one is actually the thing, because sometimes they get all bound up together. And we're actually experiencing challenges in the career and work, and our health and well-being, but then we take it out on our relationships. And then all of a sudden we think something's wrong in our relationship, but it actually is probably something else. We were expecting our person, whoever we're in that relationship with, expecting them to be that cookie, that thing that made us feel better. And then when they didn't, we're like, rah, you too. So it's helpful to be like, okay, where is the actual challenge?
And then I'd like to see the week 3 slide again.
Of the bullet points?
Yeah, help is on the way and within. Peace as stillness and movement.
Yeah. Oops, there it is.
I like that.
This one?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Oh, it was the last one I didn't get was one day at a time, it says.
Yeah, you know that one. Very good. Yay. And Dorothy Gordon again, yeah.
What types of resources could you suggest to us to read? You know, I mean, Yoga Sutras.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is the book that Swami Satchidananda created the commentary and translation, and I find it very accessible. And you'll find a lot of what I shared today is in that. Another book I really love, there's 2 other books that I really love. One of them is an older book by Pema Chodron called When Things Fall Apart. Pema Chodron, P-E-M-A, and then Chodron, C-H-O-D-R-O-N, I believe. When Things Fall Apart. Another book I love is by Thich Nhat Hanh. You all might know him. And he wrote a book that's, I forget the subtitle of it because the main title is so captivating. It's called Anger. Something like Taming the Fires, I don't know, something about that, but it's anger. And I found that was a helpful reference as well. And then the other resource, your meditation practice. Is learning to cultivate that little bit of time for yourself, even if it's what we did earlier. You sit, feel your feet on the ground, your head to the ceiling, and you take a couple of breaths. And the best one is when you're in a moment, that argument, that car that went in front of you, that phone call about, something that irked you, that you take a breath. And that becomes also, I think, one of a resource that we forget we have access to.
Will you be offering this workshop? You mentioned something end of September.
Yeah, the end of September will be a satsang, which is more of a community gathering, and that'll focus more on the final part, peace as stillness and movement. And that, I think, is September 25th or 4th. I have to look. 4th, September 24th. Okay. And that's through the integralyogasf.org. And it's similar to this, actually, a satsang, in my mind, where I'll start off with some talking and concepts, and then we get into conversation. The whole course, I would like to be able to do it again at some point, but I don't have anything on the calendar for it. But I'm glad you're interested. That makes me happy, because it's a 3 session, hour and a half times 3 workshop that I really feel is helpful. But you really did get a lot of it. The second book is by Thich Nhat Hanh. I'll type it in the chat here. His name is he's a Vietnamese monk. He passed away recently. And that was the first, I don't know if Chodron, she's a Tibetan Buddhist monk. Interesting, I'm giving you 2 Buddhist resources. I guess I also gave you the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but yeah, other things what I'm also sharing is sometimes referred to as Raja Yoga. And so if you ever see workshops on Raja Yoga, I find that I always try to get to those if you can. There it is, anger, wisdom for cooling the flames. Yeah. It's a good one. I guess, another handy book that was a major resource for me, and I'll circle back around now to Swami Satchidananda, is Daily Inspirations by Swami Satchidananda. The Golden Present is the name of the book. And that has a daily quote for every day of the year. So each day is given a specific quote. And I like that versus the ones that are just, 1 through 365. I like that they actually work with the day. And I feel like I always can relate. And it keeps me a little more accountable to read it on the day. The Golden Present, Daily Inspirational Readings by Swami Satchidananda. And he shares, it's almost like all the teachings are in those, and they're very accessible. You have an app, Golden Present app, perfect. Yeah, and I actually did a whole series in 2017. I did a reading from the Golden Present every day of the year and put it online. So I have that on YouTube. Some of them I have to say I cringe a little bit when I hear myself talk about them because I intentionally didn't prepare. I don't even open it until I record, and I just want to be in the present and we see what comes out. And sometimes I'm like, oh well, no editing. That is what it is. I'm present. Yeah. Anyway, any other last thoughts or questions or requests? Hey, the Steve Bros, can you find the link to that Integral Yoga satsang? And maybe we can put that in the chat. I don't know if it's easy to get to.
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Dorothy Gordon, are you in San Francisco? I see the Golden Gate Bridge.
You do see the Golden Gate Bridge, but as I said earlier, I'm in Ohio.
Oh, that's right. So why?
I'm present in Ohio.
Be present in front. Yes. All right. Good. Did you spend time out here, or you just love the Golden Gate Bridge?
I am in the teacher training program.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Very good. Oh, Mission District.
Right.
Yeah, because we live by the Mission Dolores Park, so I know the Mission very, very well.
Okay.
Linda Street. I totally know where that is. Absolutely. Okay.
So there's the link to your workshop on September 24th.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I think that's a sliding scale. Maybe there's maybe even a free option as well. And yeah. I think I better stop recording. Oh yeah. We're in like super overtime. This is great though. Or I'll let Vyasa, you decide. I don't know how these normally go. Vyasa is in Yogaville and he's our admin person on hand. So thank you, Vyasa, for your support today. And thank you, Yogaville, for letting me have this opportunity. And really good to be in community with all of you. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Again, thanks, Vyasa.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
I'll also put, if you want to see I'll share my website, because I teach classes and Hatha Yoga, and I actually do a meditation weekly and Tuesdays and Thursday mornings in Pacific time, 8:15 to 8:45 in the morning is a meditation. That's integral yoga style. And then also Hatha, I teach what I call Hatha flow. So I bring in a little more understanding of the movement versus static positions. which I think is really a big part of the intention. Swami Satchidananda used to say yoga is Tai Chi. So we want to think about breath and movement, not locking the body into positions, but to flow into them. So that's much of what I offer. Yeah. Thank you. Good. I'm so happy. So good to meet you all. And I'll see you again, hopefully soon. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Miriam. Thanks, Dorothy Gordon. Thanks, Padmasri, Evelyn. All right. Take good care. Bye-bye. And thanks, Thibaut.
There's T-Bone.
Yeah. Yay. All right. See you all.